I think this is the biggest matchup between Texas A&M and LSU across the board. We could point to 2011 and their Cotton Bowl. We could point to the 7 overtime thriller. Maybe it's even just a couple ranked matchups as Texas A&M has joined into the SEC and they've played annually. But I think this game has the biggest amount of stakes just across the board. Let's lay it out for you. The leaders of the SEC, 1 and 2, is these two teams because they've been undefeated in conference play. Take away the non-conference losses, like it doesn't matter at this point because we're looking at the conference standings and they lead at the very top. That's the bottom line. Call me Steve Austin. And then we look at what could happen. The winner sets themselves up for a college football playoff spot and potentially an SEC title shot if they get their job done for the rest of the year. Easier said than done. Then the loser walks much more of a finer line. They're not out of it, but it's a much more difficult path as we finish out the year. Maybe the ceiling isn't as high as we expected. So there's a lot on the line, not even talking about the foundation of Texas A&M and LSU. These two programs don't like each other. These fan bases don't like each other. They recruit in the same areas. A lot of the recruits that are top 3s for LSU are also top 3s for Texas A&M. If they're at this game, they're probably there for Texas A&M visits, but they also probably have an LSU visit scheduled down the line. It's just how this works. They're basically neighbors. Houston is their hotbed. And so with that in mind, these two teams in this respective matchup has a lot of weight, has a lot of pressure. This is a pressure cooker game. And thank God Texas A&M is at home because I couldn't imagine trying to be an away team walking in there and getting the W. Now, with that being said, before we dive into the actual game script and what I think is going to happen in my prediction, I'm gonna identify two things. First of all, it's the self-promo. You're here at Rush the Field. All I'll ever ask of you is give me an opportunity to talk football with you. We talk college football, we talk NFL. That's all I care about on this channel. And if it's a like, comment, subscribe to show support and help me get to 1,000 subs, fan-freaking-tastic. I have a sticky note right here that says help me get to 1,000 subs because that's what I wrote at Jan 1 of 2024. We're so damn close. I'm gonna keep working towards it. The second thing, obviously we're talking about Texas A&M. You see the pennant behind me. I'm gonna be objective about this. If you're an LSU fan and you're like, oh, an Aggie's just going to end up picking the Aggies, he doesn't believe in my defense, he doesn't believe in Blake Baker, Garrett Nussmeier, the whole 9 yards, hear me out, watch the end of this video. I'm going to be objective about Texas A&M and LSU because LSU is a damn good team, and I have so much respect for Blake Baker. So let's talk about LSU. Let's talk about Blake Baker. And if you don't know who I'm referring to, he is the defensive coordinator from Missouri that went to LSU. LSU completely rehauled their defensive staff, and you are seeing the benefits from it. I saw what they did to Arkansas. I had them beating Arkansas because I thought it was kind of like not a fake woke kind of pick to go with Arkansas. I get the reasoning, but I just thought LSU was the better team and in a much more momentum-based spot to actually win that game. Not the way that I thought they were going to win it. I didn't think they were going to dominate the way that they were, and the way they actually won was actually surprising just because it wasn't the brand of football that we're used to from LSU, at least within the past 365 days, where it was a pass-happy attack with a defense that you were kind of just dragging along. Instead, you beat Arkansas based off of your defense and your running attack. Caden Durham, former 4-star from Duncanville, is an absolute dog. He is a capital P problem. And Garrett Nussmeier is a gunslinger. Sometimes he'll throw the ball to the other team. Sometimes that 50-50 ball looks great when it goes to the wide receiver, but it's a 50-50 ball. It's a coin flip, might go to the corner. He is a dog, and I got to respect the fact that he stayed with LSU for as long as he did in an era where everyone flips and changes their teams like I don't know, what's a good analogy? They just change their teams all the time with the transfer portal. I mean, we're watching guys go in the transfer portal mid-season, which gets its own video. It pisses me off already, but LSU I have a lot of respect for. I think they're peaking at the right time. I think if you're able to replicate that defense that played against Arkansas, mind you, they don't even have Harold Perkins on this team. Harold Perkins tore his ACL and this defense got better because of the coaching staff and what they've been able to do, even with the narrative going into the season that they didn't have the players and they didn't go into the transfer portal enough to be able to build up this defense. If you're able to replicate what you did against Arkansas, this is a national title contender. Now, can you do that? I don't know. No one, like even the biggest LSU fan watching this, can't tell me that that's going to happen. You could say it's a prediction, but no one knows for sure that defensive performance might get better, might get worse. It may just be a one-off thing. but it's still impressive that it happened because that is something that you could set as your standard. Guys like Whit Weeks in the game that he had, he is a capital P problem. And so you have all these different pieces going into Kyle Field at a night game. I think if they play their brand of football, LSU is going to win this game. And what is LSU's brand of football? Well, the good thing is there's a couple different options. Back then, 365 days ago, there was one option. It was air raid attack and getting it into a shootout. And who's going to win that one? I mean, just think of what happened last year against Ole Miss, where it was just a complete shootout. They can win in a couple different ways now. Yes, it can be by the passing attack. Yes, now it could be by the rushing attack, potentially with Caden Durham and Josh Williams. The offensive line is the baseline right there. Can they win the front lines? And that's like most football games. And the defense, can they step up when the offense is sputtering? Because we all know the offense is not the same thing with Jane Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., but that wasn't the expectation. Can they be good enough to where the defense steps up? And this is a lot more of a balanced attack. So their brand of football is going to have to adapt to what the game is going to have to ask. The biggest question is, can they get a consistent Garrett Nussmeier and win the turnover battle? Texas A&M, though Connor Wigman did throw multiple interceptions, and I think, what was it? Josh Payton made a mention of it, of the stat of like 3 of the last 7, he's had multiple interceptions. And you can't really predict turnovers in a big spot like this, but I do feel that even if Texas A&M has 2 turnovers, the one from LSU is going to have a lot more weight because it's really hard to restart an offense in the situation that Kyle Field is going to be. It's a hornet's nest when it's like a night game, especially knowing they're hyping it up as a blackout game. They're going to be wearing the blackout all uniforms. You know, the first half is going to be a pain in the rear for a guy like Garrett Nussmeier, though he is a veteran quarterback. So that's a plus on your side. I think LSU, the biggest opportunity on the offensive side, because the defense we'll talk about in a minute with Blake Baker, is can you attack the slot corner position for Texas A&M? The front 7 for Texas A&M is vicious. It's getting better by the week. It is dominant. They're dealing with some injuries, but they're getting better by the week. Nick Scored's a problem. Shamar Turner's a problem. Shamar Stewart's a problem. And then they have another set of guys that can come in on third down to cause more problems. It's just havoc. And the secondary is really solid with some really good safety play that they can rotate out of. So what's the gap? The slot corner position. Tyreek Chappelle was a really good slot corner, out for the season. It's a rotating door with Jaden Hill, former transfer from Florida. He just gives up a lot of big plays, man. You're guaranteed to get 1 to 2 plays where your wide receiver is going to get open. We saw it with Missouri. Brady Cook just couldn't get the ball out. And if LSU can stop that pressure, Garrett Nussmeier has the arm talent to get that guy open. And there's going to be busted coverage from that slot position. I can almost guarantee it. Put Kyron Lacey there, put Aaron Anderson there. You're going to be able to get somebody open. It's just whether or not Nuss is going to have time. And Nuss has not been touched for the most part. I mean, it's about 2 sacks on the season. And so that's the big matchup. I mean, I hate to be boring and say it's going to be that front 7 versus the offensive line, but that's going to make the biggest difference because what is Nuss when he gets a little bit of pressure? We saw it against South Carolina. He didn't look great. Now, Nuss has not been able to string a ton of good games together, but you have been able to win ugly, which is something that LSU can definitely take as a positive. On the defensive side of the ball, they love to create havoc. They love bringing someone else into the box and run a lot of man coverage. I think what Blake Baker's going to ask out of Texas A&M's offense is, you're not going to be able to run the ball with Le'Veon. Can Connor Wigman beat us? Can those wide receivers get open against man coverage? I would not be shocked if they took the very similar approach of what Notre Dame did, which basically line up with a bunch of man coverage and force Noah Thomas, Cyrus Allen, not Micah Tease, Moose, a bunch of these wide receivers. Can they break man coverage consistently, and can Connor Wigman feel comfortable doing it? The best defense that Connor Wigman ran against was a Missouri defense that ran a lot of zone because he's able to pick that apart. But does he trust his wide receivers against man coverage from the week 1 performance? That's a big area. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable about that, especially Connor Wigman's been sailing a lot of balls above people's heads. It hasn't been underthrows. It's been a lot of overthrows, and that's how a lot of these picks have been happening. So can Texas A&M be able to run the ball? Can their offensive line come off of probably their worst performance of the year against Mississippi State? Though they were still able to win the game, it was their worst performance relative to some really damn good ones. That's the biggest question. So LSU attacking the slot corner and creating havoc and forcing Connor Wigman to beat them. That's how LSU wins the game. Let's talk about Texas A&M and their path. Texas A&M coming off of just a rough one with Notre Dame. That was a rough one in week 1. That was your big nation is looking at you. That was your big moment to shine, and you folded. Not to say you got blown out, but it was a big moment, and you just didn't get the job done at the end of the day. It felt like a blowout. It felt like it ripped your soul out. You just continue to win. You just keep winning. Whether it's ugly, a win is a win, because that number that goes into the win column isn't a 0.5, isn't a 0.75. It is a 1 because you won the damn game, whether it's ugly or not. And you know how to win ugly. And I think that's how they're going to want to turn this game into, even though obviously you would, of course, want to win like you did against Missouri in a blowout fashion, playing complimentary football with Connor Wigman dicing up and then Le'Veon Moss cooking. You would love that. But I think they're going to have to turn it into a street fight, especially knowing they're going to bring someone into the box against this rushing attack. Le'Veon Moss, a former Louisiana kid coming from going to Texas A&M. He's wanting to get his lick back. He just be balling, as he says in his pressers. He's got to go off, because I think as much as everyone's going to point to Connor Wigman as the X factor, and he is, and you're going to need a good performance from him, if they can't get the run game going, and if Colin Klein can't mix up looks and get these linebackers looking, because they look disciplined against Arkansas, and I think that's the biggest thing you want to test. If there's a nerve, you want to grab your knuckle and kind of hit and turn. If you're Colin Klein and you're looking at what they've been able to do on the defense side of the ball, is can you make the eyes of the linebackers, Weeks and others, can you make them move and shift their eyes with motion, which I think Texas A&M has been pretty good at. Not to mention their offensive line. I think they can run the ball on LSU. I get it. They just came off an incredible performance against Arkansas. But there is some gaps where you can run the ball against LSU. We saw it with Rocket Sanders. I believe they played a lower level cupcake team that was able to run the ball, that people were kind of Nichols was able to run the ball a little bit. Obviously, they've gotten better as time progressed. They had the great performance with Arkansas, like I mentioned, but it's not nothing. That's still film, and maybe you can replicate that with some better athletes. Then you got to be able to win on the outside. Like I said, I'd be curious if they feel confident in their corners to continuously run man against some of these wide receivers that aren't the biggest route runners in the world. You have the big body of Noah Thomas. Cyrus Allen's pretty solid. But can you, Jabri Barber is some speed that this team is desperately needed. And not to mention, you also have Terry Bussey, who can move around in the backfield and cause some different matchup issues. Then on the defense side of the ball, creating havoc to where Nussmeier cannot feel comfortable. Point blank period. I could talk about the slot corner position. I could talk about the outside corners, the safeties, the linebackers. Make Nuss uncomfortable. Make him think a little bit more. Make him wait, hold the ball, potentially put it in harm's way, because Nuss is going to give them a couple of opportunities. Whether you capitalize them or not, how many of those opportunities can you create on your own? Because Will Campbell and that offensive line is going to cause just problems. Nick Scorden, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, they need to be the ones that are causing issues. We got to talk about prediction. And I told LSU fans, if you actually waited through, I'm picking LSU. I think LSU has the pieces in place and the momentum to really force Connor to win this game. And I love Connor Wigman. We've seen the good, the bad, the ugly this year. And yeah, there's some people that are way too harsh on the kid. Like, especially after the Marcel Reed comes in for his injury. And some of the things that have been said have been egregiously bad. But I don't know what I'm going to get. I know what I'm going to get with Nussmeier. Even if he's bad, he's still going to make some crazy throws. And as Josh Pate says, this is a team in LSU that has a blindfold on and a baseball bat, but the pinata is just close enough, and it is just something that's always going to keep you on the edge of your seat. And I feel like Texas A&M is going to come out hot. They're going to come out on fire. But can they win the sludge fight that happens once the hype dies down? Once you get that first punch in the face, which they've been able to do all year. But I don't know if this defense and Blake Baker and what they're going to be able to do in potentially positioning players, if A&M is going to be able to attack that consistently. They've been a little bit predictable. We saw it with Mississippi State. Maybe they're holding things back. Like, there's things to like on Texas A&M side. There's a reason why they're favorites. You get the home environment. Weird things happen in Kyle Field. Sometimes you gotta just take that, leave it at the door, or not leave it at the door, leave it at the door. Open the door, come inside, get comfortable, because Kyle Field can make things go crazy. But my gut says LSU. My gut says LSU 24, Texas A&M 17. Keep it simple. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching Rush the Field today, dude. You guys don't even realize this video took me hours to try to record. Sometimes you guys don't see the content creator side of things when they're stuttering and they gotta restart record. And I just appreciate you guys watching this video if you did get to this point. So thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next time.